what we offer here, though, we do a lot of trainings, local families, professionals, educators, law enforcement. We do a lot of different things. So, if a family, and especially right now, with COVID and everything, we've moved a lot of our trainings to Zoom, which has been kind of nice because it's worked out better for some that couldn't get to the trainings because they couldn't find a babysitter, or they couldn't do they couldn't get out of the house for that minute long, or leave somebody with a babysitter for that long. And so we've moved to Zoom for a lot of our things, but we do trainings. We've also worked with over, I think we're at right around 2,000 educators in the last 5, 6, 7, or 8 years that we've helped with different trainings, including, we do disability specific, we do an autism training, we do an ADHD training, and we can do pretty much any of those. If anybody needs them, I can find somebody. If I can't do them, I'll find somebody that can. We do IEP trainings for parents to help them with, a better understanding your IEP, how to get what you need from the schools, do basic parent rights so that you understand what your rights are as a parent as it pertains to IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Disability acceptance. We do that with a lot of schools, a lot of community organizations, and that helps. But the trainings are just a little something we offer. And by the way, everything we do is 100% free. We charge absolutely nothing to anyone. We work off of a grant from the U.S. Department of Ed that we got in 2016, that made us a community parent resource center. There are only 23 in the United States, and there's one in Oklahoma, and it's ours. So pretty proud of that. But we will work for free because the U.S. Department of Ed basically pays us to go out and help families. We help you find resources, and I kind of talked about that earlier. Um, if you need anything from screenings to evaluations to where can I get therapies for my child, I can point you in the right direction. Um, so when we started doing this and we started really breaking down the grant and how we were going to write this, one of the things that we wrote in was a social group, because we knew transition services in our area were a big issue. Um, and so any of those young adults that were transitioning from high school out into um, a job, maybe vocational school, maybe post-secondary education, college, whatever the case may be, they were lacking social skills, job skills, things like that. And so we put together a social group for transitioning youth and adults. And one of the things that pertains to the mentoring part of this is we make sure that with our social group that we invite what we call neurotypical young adults, people without disabilities, and help them come in to make sure that they work one-on-one, or as a group with those young adults with disabilities, because uh, we understand that when they go out, when these young adults with disabilities go out and they work in a job, whether it be Walmart or an office or wherever they may go, um, they're going to have to interact with other people with and without disabilities. And so we need to start intermingling with those early so we can learn social skills. I had a really good mentor one time that told me, he said, um, there is no Walmart or McDonald's for autism, you know. So if we want our kids to act autistic, we put them with other autistic people. But if we want them to act um, like society expects them to act, then we need to put them into society. And so that's one of the things that we really worked with on the social group, and we still continue to do that. And social group, they work on transition things, how to make your own appointments, how to um, be financially stable, how to use social skills, how to not cut people off and talk over people. job skills, how do we interact with people? How do we tell somebody that we're not comfortable doing that, or if a job is not something that we really like to do. I'll give you an example of that. Is we've got a girl that works here at the office, and she's really good at organization. She's really good at cleaning. She's really good at a lot of different things, but she does not like to file because she has dyslexia. So we worked with her on, tell us what your issues are, how can we help, and then if they can do that here, then when they go out into a real job, they're more comfortable talking to their boss and saying, "Hey, I'm just not comfortable doing this. This is why," and explaining their disability to them. So those are some of the things that we worked on with social skills. We do a sib shop for siblings of kids with disabilities. That's another kind of a mentoring program, because what a lot of people don't realize, sib shops is for the siblings, and helps them better understand the disabilities, helps them better interact with their sibling with the disability, helps them better advocate for their sibling. And what happens with that, and a lot of people don't realize, is at some point, whether we like to admit it or not, as parents, excuse me, we don't want to think about this, but we won't always be here. And so usually the care of that person with a disability turns to a sibling. And so if we can start that at a young age, and when we usually do 6 to 14, and start getting them prepared to advocate, not just for their sibling, but for other people with disabilities, it will help them out. And so sib shops are a really good thing, and they're all over the state. So there's probably one close to you. If yeah, I think Sooner Success runs a lot of those, or at least gets them started. So you could go to Sooner Success website and find out where those are. We do parent support groups. We know that, again, if you're talking mentoring, some of my best mentors have been people that have been through what I'm going through, and I always look to those people. So um, we advocate in IEPs. We go in and help, not only help them with the IEPs, but also help them better understand their rights so that they can advocate as as parents on their own. My job is to basically make sure that they understand their rights, and they can go in and say, "Hey, look, this is what I want for my child. How do we get it?" And work with the school to get those things. So we have provided autism screenings. We worked with Oklahoma Autism Center Foundation to become trained to do that, and that's because the screenings in our area were almost non-existent, and so we wanted to make sure that we could get that early intervention in for autism screening. So this is just a few of the things that we do. We do a lot of different things in our area. And then that brings us to the peer mentoring in the schools, which is where Beverly got a hold of me, and she said, "Hey, can we talk about this a little bit?" But that was another thing, that when we were working on the grant, we really wanted to work on and write in a peer mentoring program. Uh, it was kind of a personal reason for me. I mean, I had a son who he was about to be in middle school when we started this. He was headed that direction, and I really wanted the kids in his school to better understand disabilities and better understand him and why he does the things he does. Because again, my son, we were told he'd probably never be in a mainstream classroom. He would never conform to a classroom. I was told that by a special ed teacher when he was young, and he's never been in anything but a mainstream classroom, because we wanted to make sure he was in there. I mean, if I want my kid to be socially accepted, he's got to be in society, and so that was one of the things that we really pushed for. But we also have to look at the other side of that, which is, I can teach him how to be socially accepted, but I also need to teach society how to accept people with disabilities. And so we worked on this peer mentoring program, wrote it into the grant. And when we got the grant, we started working on that. And so I want to jump back real quick for the social group. I'm going to show you guys a little video of how the social group has worked out. It's been one of our biggest things. And again, I really like this I think of this as my next step out of the peer mentoring that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but because the peer mentoring works in middle school, that's where we really target. You could work it anywhere from upper elementary to middle school and even in high school, but we really focus on middle school. But then that next step is the social group, which is to get them prepared for transition. And so I'll just kind of play this for you a little bit. I think this gets loud, so
Did you know the Pervasive Parenting Center offers social group for young adults preparing to transition from high school into college, vocational school, or the workforce? Free service can provide social skills as well as job skills for area students 14 and up. It also provides an outlet to help those with disabilities become better self-advocates. For more information, contact the Pervasive Parenting Center at 918-647-1255. Check out our Facebook page or visit our website at www.pervasiveparentingcenter.org.
here was our idea behind this, and this is what we really pushed in the last few years on the peer mentoring. We began at Panama Schools. That's where I live. That's where my wife works. That's where my son goes to school. So again, it was selfish, but it also, we had the ends to get there. So we worked with Panama School, and in 2016 we started a peer mentoring program there. Now, uh, I tell schools they can do it any way they want to. In fact, we worked into a second school a year or two later, Moffett School, and they do it a little bit different than Panama. Panama, what they do is they take their National Honor Society students, and that is their peer mentoring group. Moffett uses they kind of handpicked theirs the first 2 years that we did it there to try to pick some students that they thought really needed this and thought would be really good at the mentoring part of things. So um, we're designed to help students gain knowledge, respect for others, and again, that goes into that training that we talked about. So some of the trainings we do are the trainings we talked about just a little bit ago. We do um, autism and ADHD disability specific trainings to let them better understand why they're having the issues that they're having in class, and how they can better help assist those kids. And I got to tell you, one of the inclusion part of this is amazing because those mentors and those people, those kids that have been with Connor for years and years and years, uh, they're what make this program great, and they're what really proves to me and to others that it's worth it. When they can stop a teacher. Um, so when Connor went into high school, the high school teachers didn't really understand Connor, and um, his peers would step up and say, "Look, this is Connor. He does this. You'll kind of get used to it. Here's what we do to help him." And they would step up and really work with him and work with the teachers to better help them understand kind of what's going on. And it's been a really amazing thing. Again, we're working with middle school. We really want them to help, accept the kids with disabilities, embrace them, and understand that they have disabilities, but they have so many great abilities that go along with that. And so, how can we take that? Connor, while he lacks a lot of social skills, he's very good at math, and he's very good at computers, and the things that he does with computers, blows the IT guy's mind sometimes. And so that's really been something that we've worked on is, how can we build his weaknesses through his strengths. What the peer mentors though were, they learn about the disabilities and how to be friends with students with disabilities, because again, when they go out into the world, when they transition into college or technical school or a job, they're going to work with people with disabilities. They're going to be, I used to say, when I started doing, this whole thing about 10 years ago, I started saying, if how many of you know somebody with autism? in a room full of 50, we'd have about 3 hands that were raised, and now in a room of 50, we have 3 hands that don't raise. And so I would tell them early, look, if you don't know somebody, especially the teachers, if you haven't had a student with autism yet, you will. It's coming. And so they've really worked um, to help them better understand that, because there are going to be more and more of those kids that are going to graduate, those kids with disabilities, those young adults, and they're going to go out into the world, and hopefully we're planting a seed so that the community better understands them and better accepts them. Um, One of the big things, and this is one of the big selling points I have for the schools, is look, this is going to help you with your bullying. That's one of the biggest things. People with disabilities are one of the biggest targets for bullying, and we knew that going into this. But if you can get that acceptance and get that understanding early, it's really been enlightening. um, we work with them on leadership skills. So it's not just about disabilities, and it's not just about the bullying aspect. It's about, how can I be a better leader? How can I, um, you know, jump in and do what's right in a situation? And so we work on those leadership skills as well. Help others and assist teachers and staff. That's something that I always tell them. Look, you're going to be looked at with a high respect if you do this, if you become a leader, if you jump in and stop the bullying. And so they really have worked with the staff and the teachers to try to better do that. So um, I tell them, look, if you guys later on want to apply for a job, or you want to apply for a scholarship, let's say, after high school or in high school, some of the things that we work on, we can give you service hours for that. We can give you, community service hours that people are always looking for. And if you're a really good mentor for me, I'll write a letter of recommendation for you. Respect others' privacy. When you're working with people with disabilities, that's going to be one of the hardest things. In fact, that's been one of the hardest things with the schools, is we haven't been able to work um, with people with disabilities as much because they don't want to single them out. But we also kind of work them in, and then we just don't mention that they have a disability. Now, sometimes they'll come out in the trainings and say, "Hey, I have a disability," and we'll say, "Oh, okay. If you want to talk about that, you can, but we're not going to ask." So how can they help others with disabilities? Well, we talk about interacting. One of the biggest things, especially when, and I lean heavily on autism, but this is all disabilities. But one of the biggest things is just interacting with them. Greet them in the hall. You see somebody in the hall, it doesn't take anything to say, "Hey, how are you doing? How's it going today? What's your next class? Where are you headed to? Do you need any help?" Those kind of things. And it's just a simple gesture like that that can help. Include them in classroom study groups. If you've got, you got group work or something, you got to get together in a group. Hey, you want to come work with us today? Those little things like that, because a lot of times they won't ask. So notify teachers or staff of bullying. We kind of talked about that, and we talk a little bit about how we can do that in a way that kind of anonymously. Try to connect with them in a conversation. Hey, just go up, tell me, hey, what's going on? And like I said, engage. Just a simple hi may start a conversation. Sit by him at lunch. We have this issue with Connor. Connor likes to be by himself, and that's not always the case. Sometimes people want to be around other people. They just don't know how to ask. But we've really worked with Connor, and we worked with his peers to say, hey, look, just invite him to come sit by you at lunch or something. That's all you got to do. And usually he'll go do it. A lot of his peers, though, have told me, well, we've asked, and he said he doesn't want to do it. So I'll tell you a real quick funny story on that, though. Not too long ago, they were really working with him on that. He had a therapist that was working with him, and one of the teachers came up to him and said, Connor, aren't you supposed to be sitting with somebody during lunch because that was kind of the deal. She wanted him to try to sit with his friends or his peers at lunch, and he sat by himself. And he said, "Yes, Miss Dunn, but they spit in my food." And we were kind of like, well, wait, what do you mean? That's not right." And he said, when they talk, spit comes out and it gets in my food, and I don't like that. So I'll go sit with them after I'm done eating because he didn't want that conversation. So it's it's kind of funny the way they think, but just an interaction. Don't let them sit by themselves, and invite them. If they say no, then that's okay, and that's one of the things we talk about. But try to work them into what you're doing. Talk about people first language, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but a group of self advocates have come up with a way that they like to be talked about by their peers, and it's called people first language. And basically, that's exactly what it is. I'm a person first. My disability is last. If you have to explain that I have a disability, then that comes last. So Connor isn't, hey, that autistic kid. He is Connor who happens to have autism, or just Connor. The autism comes later, and so that's a whole other training. But we work with them on that because we want to make sure that they understand what's appropriate when you're talking about someone with a disability, how we can speak about them in a respectful way. And again, this is not my training. I didn't come up with this. This was self advocates on how they wanted to be talked about personally. So some of the other benefits of mentoring that we worked on, and this is what we shop to the schools when we're trying to get into the new schools, is it bridges the gap between the student with and without a disability. And again, a lot of kids, I know that most of the kids in Connor's class now understand autism, and if they had to work with anybody else with autism or another disability, that they would be very respectful and that they would be very helpful. And that's because we've worked to bridge that gap. Um, an environment of understanding and inclusion. Again, how do we interact with somebody? As much as possible, as much as they're comfortable with. Lead by example. I always tell people we do, and we'll talk about this here in just a minute, but we do a respect campaign, which used to be the No R Word campaign. It was started by the Special Olympics years ago, and they've changed from No R Word, using the word retarded, and they've changed that into respect now. But one of the things is, let's not use the R word anymore. And they say, well, if somebody else says it, what do we say? And so we work with them on, okay, you can say these things like, I don't like that. Can you please not say that, or whatever? But the biggest thing is to lead by example. Just don't do it yourself. Use other words, use whatever you need to do, but lead by example, and usually people will follow. Um, Benefits all students involved. Again, it works for both sides. It helps the person with the disability. It helps the people without disabilities. It helps the school. It helps the teachers. It helps everybody involved. Benefits families of students with disabilities. This all boils over. I know as a dad, I feel so much better knowing that his peers are there to step up and help, and that he's not being bullied every day, and that he's not being excluded. And it's kind of funny that this has gone all the way up. I'll tell you, when he was in middle school, he had a principal, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman has been great with Connor. When he went to high school, Mr. Hoffman, by sheer coincidence, moved to the high school. And so he's had him. Well, they were ordering letter jackets the other day. And for those of you who know letter jackets, that's when somebody's involved in sports or band or something like that. And Mr. Hoffman gave me a call and said, we're going to order Connor a letter jacket. Well, Connor doesn't participate in any school sports or any of that kind of stuff, any band or anything, but he's been in Special Olympics since he was little. And so Mr. Hoffman said, hey, he does sports. It may not be the school sports, but he does sports. We're going to get him a letter jacket. And to me, that shows that what we're doing is working all the way to the top. It's going all the way. And so Connor did. I wish I had a picture now, but Connor got his letter jacket Monday, and it was pretty cool. So, and he made sure to wear it today because he wanted to be like everybody else and have his jacket on. So it's been really cool. Um, Increased involvement in community and extracurricular activities. One of the things that we do is we make sure that we do a community project. Usually that's the Know Our Word or the Respect campaign. And again, I'll get into that here in just a second. We have had the kids help throw Valentine's Day parties for um, the self-contained classroom. We've made sure that they interacted. They are mentors or helpers during Special Olympics activities. Some of them are participants, some of them are just helpers, but in any way that we can help them better interact with those programs. They come and they keep score for us during bowling. They keep time during the track and field events, and so they interact in a lot of the community and extracurricular activities. They do fundraisers for local. No, they don't. I don't make them do it for us, but they do fundraisers for the local Special Olympics or any kind of disability related nonprofit. Increased interest in having a job career in the field. Our mentors, I don't know how many of them have come to me after or later on in high school and said, hey, I'm looking at being a speech therapist. I'm looking at being an occupational therapist because I really want to work with kids or people with disabilities. And so that's really helped increase their knowledge of disability rights. A lot of them just didn't know that what the rights of the kids with disabilities were, or people with disabilities. They didn't understand ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. They didn't understand, that the school has to provide them an education just like everybody else. Improved advocacy skills. Again, they'll go out from now on out and they'll step up and they'll help people with disabilities. So the benefits for the schools, again, we've seen an increase in grade point average. If I can help a person with a disability, let's say it's a learning disability, you have somebody, one of your mentors, work with them as a tutor or just help them out with their homework, those kind of things. We've seen grade point averages go up. Improve attendance. If I don't feel like I'm included, I don't want to go to school. So why should I try? And this is one of the ways that it's helped them feel more included and help them want to go to school because they can interact with other kids. Fewer suspensions. Again, that kind of goes up the ladder. Not just interaction with their peers and not getting into fights, but having the teachers, having the principals, the superintendent better understand the disabilities and why they're having their behaviors that they're having can help lower some of this, the suspensions and things. So increase graduation rates because again, if we go to school, we have better grades, we don't get kicked out, we're gonna graduate. Increase enrollment in post-secondary education. Um, I think I'm surprised as much as anybody that these kids are wanting to go to college. They're wanting to go to a technical school, a vocational school, and I'm only surprised because at some point a lot of kids just don't even want to go to school. But now we're seeing that because of the inclusion and the mentoring, we're seeing a lot of them want to continue to do that. So that's really good. And again, we push the bullying a lot in the schools. I told you about the R Word campaign. So every year we try to get our students together and work with not just the students, but they also are in charge of organizing an R Word video or anything that can help with respect. And actually, it's a lot about respect. That means that they also go out and they work with community leaders. On this video that we put together, this was from a couple of years ago. You'll see our mentors, and you'll also see at one point the chief of police. He's on here as well because they went out, and there are other videos that have the superintendent and different people from the. I think we had one with fire department, but they're in charge of organizing this and putting this together. And so this is the one that came out a couple of years ago. So
I believe in acceptance. I believe in unity.
Who are you to judge people without knowing them?
It's not just the word, it's the context of the words.
It's offensive when it's personal. We are born to be real, not perfect. We don't get to choose what words hurt others, but we do get to choose whether or not we use them. Drop the R word and pick up this R word, respect. Words are powerful. Use them wisely.
Disable the label.
People hear your words and feel your attitudes.
Spread the word to end the word.
To make a difference in the world, you must be different from the world.
Visit rword.org to pledge to respect.
so that's one of the different things that we've done, and they've done many videos, but I want to make sure that they are vested in this, and they go in and set things up and write some of this things. They had to research what they were going to say and how to put it together. But again, we worked with them on the trainings. I think I kind of went through all of this. Yeah, so all of that's what we've been kind of talking about, but these are some of the main things that we really push. And we've seen such a huge involvement with the schools love it. We have had an issue with it, I'm not going to lie, in the last year because of COVID and getting into the schools. Every time we think we're getting in, then they have to cancel us. So we're working on how can we get in a different way. But it really, when we could get into the schools, they loved it, and we would go in every other week, or we try to get in twice a month if we can. We don't want to overstep our bounds and get in too much, but it's been a really, really good experience on the peer mentoring. That's basically my whole thing. I just wanted to kind of explain, I think, and Beverly, I don't know if this is exactly what you were looking for, but I really, this was one of our main focuses when we wrote the grant, that we wanted to work with other students to help them understand disabilities. And this was the way we could do that. And then once we got to this, that's where the social group, we thought, at first we wrote that in that we were just going to help people with disabilities. And I thought, I'm going to have them, they need mentors too. I mean, I need a mentor, I've got plenty of them. So why wouldn't anybody else need one? So.